Rasmussen poll showing Governor Mitt Romney now leads President Obama among likely voters in the critical battleground state of Ohio. This is a first in this race, and it is a significant shift from just a week ago when the president and Governor Romney were tied at 48%. In most polls, the president had been leading Governor Romney in Ohio. Chris Stirewalt is our Fox News digital politics editor and host of Power Play on FoxNews.com Live. The candidates largely suspending a lot of their re-election activities today, Chris, although Ohio has a couple of events, and so do some of the western states because they're not being affected by Sandy. But Ohio, how many times have you and I talked about these likely voter polls and the polls tightening in several swing states, but talked about how, is it really going to matter if Romney loses Ohio, because no Republicans ever won the White House without it, and no sooner do we have that discussion for the umpteenth time than Rasmussen comes out with a poll showing, as far as we can tell for the first time, Governor Romney's taking the lead there.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing, Megan. We've seen all along that Romney couldn't quite close in Ohio, even when he was up in other states, and he's continued to do better in places like Florida and Virginia. Ohio has posed this difficulty that he couldn't close the gap with the president. What we've seen has been this slow-motion surge from Mitt Romney. It started after his first debate, and it's moved forward point by point. It's been not a landslide. It's not been explosive, but what it has been is steady. And that's what Mitt Romney has to like, is that he continues to gain ground. We now know that Ohio is essentially a tie, but before it had been a tie with a slight advantage for the president. Now it's the other way, and if you're Mitt Romney, you have to like that this close to Election Day.
As we watch the storm surge on the beach in Point Pleasant, New Jersey, and we talk about a possible surge for Governor Romney in Ohio. For him, it couldn't come at a better time. Clearly, we're 8 days out from the election, Chris, but you look behind the Rasmussen numbers to figure out how he did it in Ohio, how he got to this point where it's now, you know, it's one poll, but it's the only poll he's had in Ohio showing him ahead. And Rasmussen's numbers show that Romney has a 12-point advantage on the economy. And who do you trust to handle the economy in Ohio? It was just a 7-point advantage last week for Romney there. So he's gone up to 12 in a week. What did that?
Well, what's done that is, and we've seen this in other polls, we've talked about this in other polls, is the way that independents are breaking for Romney. What Romney's been able to count on all along through this election is that the Republican base has stood behind him foursquare. They're with him no matter what. Even if he moves to the middle or anything else that he does, they've stood with him through this because they so want the president out of office. But now the independents, and we see it day after day, poll after poll, are breaking Romney's way. Now, what that means is that the president is going to have a lot of work to do to get his base out and voting to try to overcome this the late advantage in momentum for Mitt Romney.
Because Romney's now got the lead, a 12-point advantage on the economy, and he's got a 10-point advantage on the issue of foreign policy and national security, which had typically also been an area in which President Obama was dominating. That lead's not only eroded, but he's now 10 points behind Romney in Ohio on that issue. I want to ask you, though, because Rasmussen looks at the numbers, and Ohio is one of the states in the union that allows early voting, typically advantageous to the Democrats, and so it is in this race. He says that Obama leads 62% to 36% among the early voters in Ohio, and 1 in 3 Ohio voters has already cast his ballot. So 1/3 of the Ohio electorate's already cast their ballot, and Obama's leading 62 to 36%. Romney has a large lead among those who still plan to vote, but that's a big gap to make up.
It's a big gap to make up, but we remember this is a sample within the sample. This isn't a huge number of people that you're talking about here inside this poll. But the other thing is this. Any given Republican votes at a higher frequency than any given Democrat. On a per capita basis, Republicans vote with higher intensity historically. That's especially true this year because of an enthusiasm gap. That means that the president needs to do overwhelmingly well in early voting, and he needs to use the months of advantage that he had in terms of fundraising and time and organization, years of advantage on organization, to drag as many Democrats to the polls as he possibly can. Because if this election were just on Election Day, like it used to be before so many incumbents, and particularly Democrats, succeeded in turning this into election month, if it was just Election Day, you'd expect the president to lose by a pretty stout margin. But he's got to use every second of this time to get his people to the polls to offset Romney's advantage.
Well,